Well, good day to you, or good night, or good afternoon, or whenever you decide that you want to listen to this podcast. You might be a longtime listener or just tuning in, and you might have chosen to listen to today's for the first time because the album that we're discussing. But either way, welcome to Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens. It is I, Jacob Givens, and I'm glad to have you here. But we chose the album that we did today for very specific reasons. My guest, this is not only his waterproof record, but we chose to talk about it for a particular reason, which you'll find out in this show. But today I'm welcoming on Waterproof Records Daniel G. Harmann. He is a songwriter, composer, all-around great dude who I've had the pleasure of hanging out with, and he's a good friend. So without further ado, let's get into it. It's time to talk about August and Everything After by Counting Crows with Dan Harmon. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens.
You know the drill. Before we get into it, I got to talk about DistroKid, my sponsor, and an amazing way to get your music out into the world. I have a link. It's in the description of this episode, and you got to click on it because that's going to give you 30% off your first year of uploading music. And the link is easy to remember. It's just distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. You can click on it if you can't remember that for some reason, but it's very easy. And DistroKid is going to be the way that you can get your songs, all your music out to the world instantaneously. They have an app that you can use to monitor if people are streaming, what money you're making on it. You can do all sorts of cool things like split the revenues between you and the other artists that you collaborated with. It's just a fantastic tool and a way to get your stuff out there. So I highly recommend you check out DistroKid. You've probably heard of them before, but they're the easiest way to get your stuff on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, everywhere all at once. So I use them. I love them. They're DistroKid. Check them out. Once again, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof, and that's going to get you that 30% off. But now that that's out of the way, we can get to the music. Not that I wanted to get that out of the way, but you know what I'm saying. I love DistroKid, but you tuned in because you wanted to talk about this album. Or maybe you were surprised that I was talking about this album, but no surprise that we're talking to my guest who is very passionate about this album and this band, and we're about to learn more about that right now. So please welcome to Waterproof Records, Daniel G. Harmon. I am so stoked to have you here today.
Man, I couldn't be happier to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time.
Yes. We've been talking about it for a while since the first time that we got a chance to hang out in real life, that we relive. I'm going to tell the audience a little bit about our tradition now. So Dan and I met through social media, and, I discovered his music, and we've been talking ever since. And then he let me know, because he doesn't live where I live, that he was going to be in town. And so we met up. And we got to go to this Mexican restaurant where we had chips and salsa and margaritas and burritos. And it was one of those places that they come in and they offer to take your picture, to kind of commemorate this amazing dining experience. This is pretty common in a lot of, Mexican restaurants. I just took my son, and they do it for their birthday. So they put the sombrero on the head. But they asked Dan and I, who are hanging out for the first time, do we want our picture taken? And what did we say, Dan?
Fuck yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck yes. Why wouldn't two grown adult men want to have a photo taken of them, cheersing a margarita?
Zero apprehension, romantic styles.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do it. So we got the picture taken, and we had to make sure that there were two of them, because I wanted one and Dan wanted one. So we both get our pictures, and then we have continued this time-honored tradition now of taking that photo and putting it in some random place where we are and sending a shot, the photo, to the other. So like I went to rock and roll fantasy camp, and I brought the picture of us toasting margaritas there, and I put it on the amp and in the studio space, sent it to Dan. Dan sent it to me from his vacations. It's been something that I hope we do until the day we die. That's what I hope.
We will. I hope they bury us with them.
Yes. I'm going to tell that to my wife. I'm going to say, hey, by the way, I know this is going to sound odd, but could you, when I die, if Dan's still alive, will you put the picture on my chest, take a picture
of my corpse.
and send it to Dan.
He'll get it.
He'll get it.
Don't worry about it.
He'll
get
think it's very funny. Very funny. Anyway, so dude, I am so stoked that you're here, and I want to, I talked a little about you up top, but I want to give them an idea of just your musical journey, about, what led you to where you are today, and then we can dig into your waterproof record. But what I was gonna say was, so you're originally from Arizona, right? That's your home state. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was actually listening to your awesome interview with Wally Trifles, and you and I kind of had a similar upbringing. I grew up in a really small town, wasn't like going to punk shows or anything, and honestly until I left.
Yeah.
And so I think I was kind of a little scared as well. Really, my music for me came from my cousin who lived in LA and would send me, recordings of K-Rock, of like Jed the Fish doing the, like, what was the countdown? It was All Mixed Up or whatever, where the countdown was in a weird order.
Yeah.
So actual tapes of that, and like Smith's tapes, and also skateboarding videos. Always had like cool music to them, and there was compilation videos that came out with, like, that's how I discovered like Dinosaur Jr. and the Lemonheads and stuff. And then, Counting Crows came along my senior year, which obviously isn't like punk, but was hugely influential, bigly influential to me as a musician.
Yes.
And we'll get into that in a minute. But,
wink, wink, nudge, nudge, even though you saw the title of the episode and that we're going there. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just saying they know what's coming. So,
then I just moved to Phoenix right after high school. I started playing guitar in high school, and was like singing. I was in choir and stuff, but wasn't super serious about it. Then moved to Phoenix, was in a band. We were called Kendrick, which, if we were still around, we'd probably be sued.
Yeah.
Even though we were first.
You were first. You were the first Kendrick.
Yeah, of ever.
Was there a reason why it was called Kendrick back then?
Yeah, it was there's a town called Flagstaff in northern Arizona, and there's a street called Kendrick that I remember I took a really cool like black and white photo of in the snow of the street sign.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really cool. That's a cool like word or name that I'd never heard before. And
absolutely. I'd never heard the word or name before, Kendrick Lamar came along, so it's like, that's amazing. That's cool.
So we were called Kendrick, and that was fun. I played bass and sang. Right. Because I really didn't know what I was doing. And then 5 years later, I moved to Seattle. And honestly, you and I, again, similarities. I moved to Seattle because of fucking singles.
Yeah.
That was kind of my North Star also in high school. It was like Pearl Jam. I loved that stuff. And I saw singles and I was like, oh shit, this kind of changed my life. And so I moved here because at the time, Phoenix was a bit of a artistic kind of wasteland, I wanted to be in a place that people were making music, and I knew this was 99. So I moved here, didn't know anyone. My best friend at the time and I moved up here together. Didn't know anyone and just kind of got to work. And then in 2001, I recorded my first record.
Failures in Motion.
Yes, man.
I did my research.
Are you Nargy-walling me? Or?
I am absolutely. I want the audience. I want the audience to know that Jacob Givens does his research.
Yes, I love it. Nargy-war, is that how you say it?
Yeah. Nargy-war. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And so I recorded with Greg Markle, who was here last night, helping me do some stuff in my studio.
Oh, I love it.
He played at my wedding. Like, we've been like really good friends since we recorded that record 25 years ago, I guess.
Wow.
Or 22 years ago.
Yeah. Let's not round up. Let's not round up.
So
we got to round down.
That at our age, it's good to round down.
Yes.
I think I was 17 when I recorded that record.
Yeah, right.
Hardly. We did that, and I just kind of wanted to pursue it and did a little bit of touring and continued to put out records, and never really got, I think now it's kind of like a bit of everything works out for a reason, but at that time I was really wanting to tour and and play cool shows with like Death Cab and stuff like everyone does. But it didn't work out that way. But I continued at it. I worked regular jobs and I was a licensed electrician for 8 years while I was still being a musician, playing shows, getting up at, going to bed at 1 a.m, getting up at 4 a.m to go wire a building.
Amazing.
It wasn't, but
no, of course.
It was good. It was good experience.
Amazing the dedication to the art. I know the story. I know the struggle. Our paths are very similar. It's like we can't help it. You know what I mean? Yep. We can't help it. It's just it's a blessing and a curse. You go, I've got to pay the bills. I have to work a job. No one has come along and handed me $1 million and said, follow your dreams, kid. Yep. So I've got to just do it when I can do it. And that's often the middle of the night. And that was me writing scripts or doing stand-up comedy. It's funny because, the music thing, I still had a huge drive and passion for it, but I love watching your journey because I'm like, that's just another road that if I just put all of my energy into, I could have been as prolific as you are. Because if you go look at, Dan's music, Daniel G. Harmann on Spotify, it's got a ton of music and it's all great. And you've just continued to chip away year after year after year, even though life's responsibilities have pulled you in other places. And I just think that truly an artist, we just can't help ourselves. Whether we're getting global notoriety or we literally have a handful of loyal fans, it doesn't matter. We got to make stuff, right?
Well, thanks, man. Thank you for saying that. And it was, you kind of hit the nail on the head because I had a similar crossroads where, when that first EP came out, Greg was gracious enough to put it out on his label and it got some okay distribution and, it didn't sell a ton or anything, but I was like, okay, I enjoy photography and I would maybe wanted to do theater because that was the thing I wanted to do. I went to college briefly for, or I wanted to be a graphic designer. And at that point I was like, well, I have to make a fucking decision because I can't do it all. And what's the thing that's always been with me? And it was music. And I chose to continue on that path and kind of, shut all the other outlets down, not, permanently or anything, but at that time, this is where my focus needs to be.
Absolutely.
And so I've kept at it and I have, a lot of records out and fast forward to, I guess the pandemic and just through social media and connections that I have, I started being able to collaborate with a lot of artists internationally and, and nationally. And people always ask me what's the biggest, marketing tool you can suggest for an artist? And I say it's collaborate with other artists because you get their audience base and vice versa. And they push you in different directions that you wouldn't necessarily go. Right. I always wanted to work in hip hop, but it wasn't until I started collaborating that I was like, oh, now I'm working with a hip hop artist, or now I'm learning how to make hip hop beats because that's their primary genre, that kind of thing. And so it pushes you to do shit that you maybe had always wanted to do or had never thought that you could do. Yeah. So collaborating, pandemic, I put out a bunch of, singles, and that was awesome. I love all of them. But then last June, the night before my birthday, I broke my leg in a weird accident. Slipped on a tiny step coming out of my birthday dinner with my wife's aunt and uncle. And, I was in surgery the next day. It was a full tib fib shatter. My leg was floppy like a football player, The tib fib shatter is playing, I think, in 2 weeks out in Palm Desert. They're on Matador, right? Yeah, they're on Matador. They're pretty heavy. Yeah, I've always loved that band. I think their earlier stuff is a little better. Yeah. I hear you. As a Tib Fib Shatter fan, you got to really get them at the early stuff. Right. I mean, they're no car seat headrest. Totally. Anyway, so you had this terrible break off of a very, very small movement, which is always right. It's just the human body is so bizarre. We can do these crazy things where our body experiences impact or it's such a close call. And then you have this slight movement and the body just goes,
trip. And you go, why? Why?
It wasn't like I was like, you know, snowmobiling off the back of a polar bear or any
you
shit
were
like that.
you weren't Johnny Knoxville. This wasn't like, hi, welcome to Jackass. I'm gonna, you know, you were leaving your birthday dinner and you stepped off a curb.
Yep. And it was rainy and mossy as it is in Seattle, and that was that. And so I was in the hospital for 4 days, had a big surgery, came back, and just basically lived in our bedroom for a month of June. And I had I travel a lot, you know, personally and also like for work and stuff. And so I always take a little synthesizer. It's called an OP1. It's like a teenage engineering thing. It's a 4-track synthesizer and drum machine. So my goal on all my flights was like, I'm just going to like write and record a full song and dump it into Logic, because, you know, I was tired of like watching movies and, you know, reading. I just wanted to do something productive while I was sitting there. So I did that. And I had like 6 songs that I built out that they were very different than anything else I'd ever really done. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with these. And then all of a sudden light bulb comes on while I'm like laying in bed with my leg up in June. And I was like, I asked my wife if she would grab my MIDI keyboard, and she did. And so while she was asleep next to the dogs and I was like getting stoned and high on drugs, I was just building these songs out and turning them into an ambient record. And I ended up really falling in love with them and falling in love with that process. It was weird as someone I've gotten into like keyboards and synthesizers, as you know, over the last couple of years, but my primary instrument is guitar and singing, and I couldn't do either of those. So like removing those pieces was scary, but also kind of freeing. And the problem that I find with a lot of electronic or ambient music is there's not like a strong sense of melody in a lot of it. No disrespect. There's a lot of artists that do it, but that do it really well. But I was like, my strong suit, I've always felt, has been melody, and whether it's vocal melody or guitar or bass melody. So I was like, I want to build these songs out, but I don't want them to just be like 5 sections of things. I want them to have something that weaves them all together. So that was kind of my goal. And I did it. The songs, I did 6 on that first one that came out in last September. And then I enjoyed that process so much and enjoyed that genre of music so much that I wanted to continue. So the next round, I invited some kind of friends along, some collaborators. Corey Wong is on there. A lot of YouTubers that I know are on there. Did another batch that came out in June, and then I pressed vinyl, and that came out about a month ago. So I smashed the 2 volumes together, Unspoken Ghosts.
Awesome.
Anyway, that was my last year essentially. And, you know, I don't know if it's serendipity or circumstance or whatever the word, but it all kind of worked out, you know. And my injury was fucked up and it sucked, and it was really hard for my wife because she had to literally do everything. And but it's leading me in new directions. I'm about to start scoring a podcast, scoring is where I ultimately want to be. So, and I think a lot of that came because of this experience, you know, and that being able to do this type of music that I wouldn't have necessarily done before or not known how to do, but I've kind of found my footing in. So.
I found your footing.
I didn't even think about that.
Couldn't help myself. The dad jokes in me will never end.
Finally found my footing, because I did not.
Yes. No, I think that's so fascinating. And I do think that we've often found in life, right, the limitations lead you down these different creative paths. I think that in a weird way, it's good when you can't do the thing that you do the best sometimes, because it forces you to try other things. I think it goes back to what we were just talking about going through our young adult life and wanting to try so many different things. I think that when we were children, there was this idea of like, you grow up, you do the career that you're set to do, and then that's it. Like, that's the path. But for people that consume a lot of different types of media, they're avid readers, they love cinema, they love music, they love art, digital art, everything. It's impossible to not be lured in and be like, but I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to create these things. And I remember not too long ago, it was a couple years ago when I was first going up on social media and sharing my stories about things. And I made a video that was like talking about my journey in LA. And I was like, I did this as an actor. I did this as a comedian. I did this as a writer. I wrote an album, blah, blah, blah. And somebody commented, and they were like, you didn't succeed because you didn't do one of them enough. And I was like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Right. You don't have this mathematical equation that you just go, that's it. I'm only going to act, so I'm definitely going to make it in Hollywood because it's the only thing I'm going to do. It's like, it's just not that simple. You create and pursue things, and you write songs, you perform because you need to, you have to. And then sometimes life comes along and says, you can't do that thing right now anymore, or you have to switch gears. And I love the fact that there you were, probably incredibly depressed with a broken leg, unable to do the thing that you want to do. And you pivoted and you said, I'm going to take this thing. By the way, I want to know what that device is that you're talking about. I'm like, I feel like I need to get one of these, the recorder.
V1?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're awesome.
Jeez.
It's on my shelf. It's on my shelf right there. It's really cool in that you can actually record on it. You can make beats. So I would always just kind of start with like a drum loop and then add a synth to it and then layer a couple other things on that. I would limit myself to the 4 tracks and then dump it into Logic and be done with it. And a lot of these were songs that I hadn't heard in like 6 months. Yeah. Because I just had forgotten about it or moved on to another thing. Even if I hadn't done anything with those songs, it was just still fun making them. Yeah. And just kind of being creative while in a trapped little pod flying through the air.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is what will lead us to kind of, the journey of your songs, your albums that you've put out over the years, continually writing and recording. It all started somewhere. And usually that's a very pivotal moment. And, one of the reasons that I created this podcast is this idea that songs or music is introduced to us at those, very formative years of our lives where we're just being molded and shaped into who we're going to become. And I'm fascinated by, what it is the thing. And it's funny because when Walter was on and I asked him, he was trying to explain to me that when I asked him, I was like, what's the album that made you want to write music? And it dawned on me that I'd been asking 2 different questions of my guests and I hadn't even put it together. The idea of a waterproof record is one that's timeless, but the one that spurs us on is a kind of a different thing because it can be this album or this piece of music that we heard and it changes forever how we write or perceive music, but it's not necessarily the one that we say, that's my favorite album of all time. So I think that that's the interesting thing about a waterproof record for me is that it's kind of all of those things in one. It's the album that got us creatively to move down a very specific path. And then that way it makes it kind of, you can never sink it. You can never... It's always going to be one of the ones that you hold up. Is it your favorite album? Not necessarily, but it's definitely a big one. Yep. So how old were you when you started playing an instrument? Do you remember?
17. Yeah,
17?
It was my senior year, and I didn't turn 18 until I graduated, after I graduated. So yeah, I was 17, and I got given. I was given a guitar. I worked the night crew at Safeway, which is a grocery store where I grew up. And during the summer, I was a stalker. And so I befriended a dude, or he befriended me, who knew that I loved music. And he's like, well, I've got this piece of shit acoustic guitar. You're welcome to it. And so he brought it in, and that was kind of where it started. And when he says piece of shit, he's not joking. It was like the strings were like a mile off the fretboard. And which to me, was savage, like brutal to try to learn on, but the best thing to learn on. Yes.
Your hands are never going to be stronger than that. Yeah. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he was a stalker, not a stalker at the grocery store. I just want to clarify.
I was a night stalker.
I was a night stalker at Safeway.
It's not weird, right?
Yeah. No, but most first instruments for us, I don't know anybody who started playing guitar, and
Not
they
a
were like,
Martin,
yeah, like my parents bought me a Martin or a Taylor or a Gibson Les Paul, and I have the best instrument to start out with. Most parents, at least in our generation, right? Or, mine was a Christmas gift. It's like, I think they probably understand, like, this could be a phase. And so, like, I'll get you a guitar for Christmas, but it ain't going to be anything that you're going to keep forever. My first guitar was a Harmann electric, and I think at the time it was $99. No disrespect to my mom and dad for spending what they could on Christmas for me to have that, but it was not a good guitar, so it's not one that I'm like, this is the guitar I learned on. But do you still have the acoustic with the high action anywhere? It's long gone.
I wish I did. I mean, there's another guitar. I know where it exists. My friend Jacob has this, like my first electric guitar. It was a Strat. I don't know where I got it. Maybe his dad gave it to me and I gave it back to him. But my friend Jacob has it now.
And not this Jacob. It's another Jacob. Otherwise, I would Otherwise, I would send it to you right away.
Different BFF Jacob. Yeah. No, I don't have it. And it's funny that you say that about your parents. My parents wanted nothing to do with me playing music at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Satan.
Satan. Well, that was, as my listeners know, it was a big thing. I don't think my mom and dad, especially my mom, was hoping that when I got a guitar, I'd be learning the demonic metal that I was trying to learn. I think she was hoping I would come out and sing Willie Nelson or Neil Diamond, or maybe a nice Christian contemporary. Maybe I do some DeGarmo.
Amy Grant.
Yeah, Amy Grant, DeGarmo and Key, or Michael W. Smith. Maybe that was her hope and prayer for me. But
throw down some DC Talk.
DC Talk, baby. Audio adrenaline. I can name them all.
Oh my God. Yeah, Newsboys.
Newsboys. But so you get your guitar, your acoustic guitar, and is it at this time that we're going to go ahead and say, Daniel G. Harmon, what is the album that you chose today?
Well, it has to be Counting Crows, August and Everything After.
There you go. So did you hear this?
I think around that time.
Yeah.
Because that came out in 93, or in August of 90. Actually, it came out in September of 93.
I think so.
And I had just started my senior year. I would have just gotten. Is that a word, Jacob?
It is. It's a word. You're doing great.
You.
Gotten.
Killing it.
You just got it.
I'm gotten by on this podcast. I'm just gotten by. I had just received it, and I loved that record right away. But it wasn't, I don't think, at that time the thing that got me to want to play guitar, because when you first hear music and you have an instrument, you don't know what the fuck is going on.
Totally.
It took me forever to know what, I always call it the Jimmy World, chugga chugga, what a chugga chugga was, or how to do that,
Right.
Or what delay was, and why those guitars sound so weird on this song, but so clean on this song. You don't have any fucking concept. You don't even know if it's a guitar. You know?
There's no foundation. And in the 90s, it's not like anything was readily available to teach you. You couldn't look up a YouTube video to see that's how that happens. You go to a music store, and there's these stomp boxes behind glass, and you're like, what do these do? And, and nowadays there's thousands of different variations, hundreds of thousands of different pedals. But back then it was it was pretty stripped down, pretty bare. There was only a couple selections of different things, different directions you could go. But the sounds you're hearing on these albums and these records, you had nobody to explain, hey, the instrument in your hand is making a lot of these really strange sounds because of patches and loops, and you don't know what that is, and it takes time. Totally. Yeah.
And whatever dark magic the Edge summons.
Right.
Who knows what the fuck that is.
Right, right. You're like, when was he playing outside of a canyon, and just was like, I want my guitar to have sustain that will echo all the way through this canyon and then come back to me in a song. And they're like, we got you.
But also bounce off all the walls.
All the way down. All the way down. And he was like, can anybody do that tone for me? And somebody was like, yes, Edge. Yes, I can.
I got your guy. His name's Brian Eno.
Yes. He's going to do it for you. He's going to do it for you. So you get this album. You also have your instrument at the time. But what is it that really grabs you about August and Everything After by Counting Crows? What is the thing that happened in your brain when you heard this album? Hard question.
I didn't have MTV or anything like that. I didn't know what these dudes looked like or what was going on with them. It was just the melodies of these songs that were so beautiful and heartbreaking. And something in me was like, there's something about how this guy phrases his lyrics and his delivery over that guitar that is not something I had heard before, and maybe not anything I've heard since, to be honest with you. Because we'll get into it, but like as I was re-recording that record, that shit was a fucking marathon. Because that dude
I can't even
is
imagine.
the most verbose motherfucker ever, and his delivery is so interesting and beautiful. It's like a rapper, the way his delivery of lyrics over the guitars and instruments is just so unique to him. And I think that that's probably why they kind of became popular. And it's not a thing that you can really explain. Like I'm trying to, but I can't, like it's just that. And the hooks were perfect. And I always thought of myself as like a non-traditional songwriter as far as structure goes. But to me, that was just like being lazy and not knowing how to write a song, And I thought, I kind of looked at those songs. I was like, oh, that's weird structure. But it wasn't until I actually broke them down that I was like, oh, it's all exactly the same. It's all like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. Like every single song. But they do it so well, and there's so much interesting dynamic in there that makes it seem non-traditional, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. Yeah, there's it's interesting because this works in every field of study. Like, for example, screenplays, when people come to me and they say, well, how do you write a screenplay? I'm like, you're going to want to understand these act structures first. You're going to want to know the moments there. And, a lot of young writers will say like, well, I want to be able to do something like that's avant-garde and off the grid and kind of do something out of the box. I'm like, you can, but you have to know how the structure works first. And then you get to play around with the structure, or you get to develop it in such a way. But that sounds kind of like it's going to slow down the creative process. But there is something about, if you know how a song can be formulated, the path, then you can make the dynamics of where you're going with it so much more unique to you. But that foundation is very important to have before, avant-garde artists like Shudder to Think, Craig Wedren, he knows that his song may be weird and off kilter, but he absolutely knows verse, chorus, bridge. He knows it so that he can then leave it and come back in a unique way. So it's really important to know that.
And it wasn't until 21 years of making records that I fucking realized that, to be honest with you. You know, I was like, I'm just going to write these parts and then that's it.
Yeah.
That I don't want to ever say, talk shit about my back catalog or say I could have done better, because it was what it was, right? It is what it is. It's a moment in time.
Yeah.
But I never took the fucking Dave Bazan advice, which was like, how do you write a great song? And Dave would say, you listen to this record and you learn that record. Take your favorite record and learn it.
Yeah.
And I never did that until now. And now I'm like, well, fuck, this kind of changes everything.
Yeah.
I'm not musically trained. I barely know what chords I'm playing unless it's like first position. It's 100% ear.
Yeah. I'm the same.
not ever going to probably change that part of me. But as far as like the structure of how to write a song, that has been kind of changed, shaken up since redoing this record.
And I'm glad you just, we said that. So I wanted to share with the audience. Dan just released his own version of August and Everything After. You can go listen to his cover of the album start to finish. And it's only been out a couple weeks. He did a fantastic job. It's excellent. It's so well recorded. You really do have the process down to where this sounds like a very, very high quality recording. He handled a lot of the dynamics, and it's his own version of this album that's iconic for him. So I highly recommend, if you're not familiar with Counting Crows, August and Everything After, or go check out his album. It's great. It's great. And then go into his back catalog as well. But this is one of the reasons why we're talking about this right now is he's just gone through the entire process of re-recording this 30-year-old classic album. So
Yeah. And it wasn't until I started the process that I realized it was 30 years. So when I talked to you, when we were hanging out last January, I brought this up to you because you were like, I'd like to have you on the show.
Yeah.
What record would you do? And I was like, well, I would probably do this record. But I was like, let's wait because I'm going to do this.
You had an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that I turn ideas into real things is I talk about them.
Right.
Because then I'm committed to it.
Yeah.
Like now you know about it.
Right.
Now my wife knows about it. My friends know about it. So if I don't do it, then I don't want to say I'm embarrassed, but you're making it more of a real thing when you commit to it by saying you're going to do a thing.
I do the exact same thing. Same thing. I tell people in my life that I'm going to do this thing, and then that kind of holds me accountable so that I'll do it.
Yeah, accountability. That's the word I was looking for. And when I first, so this record has never left me. And I said when I posted about it, like no one really knew, but I posted my little story. I was like, I left the town I grew up in the 2 days after I graduated high school, and I listened to this CD like on repeat, counting and it was just that was such a traumatic experience leaving the town, even though it was what I needed, what I wanted. But you're leaving everything behind to move to a city. This record helped me on that journey, and I've listened to it all the time since then, for 30 years. And it for the last year or so. My thing is like, we'll watch TV. My wife will go upstairs with the dogs and I'll clean downstairs. Like I tidy the kitchen and, clean the couch and do the dishes and all that stuff. So when we come downstairs in the morning, it's nice and ready for us, or crisp for the new day.
Yes.
So I'll generally have headphones on, sometimes be a little whiskey drunk, and just like
love it.
Oftentimes in those, what I'm listening to was that record just over and over and over and over and over again. And you find yourself obviously singing along and thinking, God, that's so fucking beautiful. I would love to do something like this. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to fucking do it. Like it seemed so absurd that I was like, whatever, I'm just going to do it. I don't care,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I told my wife and she was like, whatever, dude. Like,
okay.
And then she's like, now I have to listen to that shit all the time.
That's so funny.
Not that record, but me
but
trying to
your
do that
version of that record.
And I told Ryan Leva, aka Johnny Nails, who mixes and does a lot of production stuff for me. I told him about it, and he didn't know there's a lot of blows my fucking mind, dude. There's a lot of people, even our age, that don't know the record.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, man, I support you in this, but don't spend too much time on it. Get it done. I'll help you with it, but then get back to what you should be doing. And I was like,
right.
Okay, totally good advice. But I realized in that moment, this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
This is all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? What's the best way to record it? And I had a process for all of that. So I started in June and finished in August, and had to get it out. I had to fucking get it out. And here's why. Once I realized it was the 30-year anniversary for it, game was on. Because I was like, this motherfucking Ryan Adams is going to beat me to it.
Yes.
Because that dude is dropping every single record these days.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, so you're like, I got to do it first. Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to be like the guy that drops the album like the week after or the day after like Ryan Adams does it or something.
Does the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's amazing. So here comes, this is the part of the show where I do the dun, dun, dun. No, I'm just kidding. No, but my honest confession, which I have since changed my mind, but this is very important to what I talk about on the show about music arriving at very specific windows in our life. And when you say this album means something to me and somebody goes like, it's take it or leave it. You know what I mean? It's 1993. You've just left home. This album lands in your life. I'm a freshman in high school when August and Everything comes after. And the first song I hear by Counting Crows is Mr. Jones. and I write it off completely. I'm like, not interested, don't like this, don't enjoy it, click off. And so by the time Round Here comes around, now remember, I'm a freshman, I'm much younger, and for whatever reason.
Don't get cocky.
Yeah, no, what I
Not
mean
that
is.
much younger, buddy.
No, I'm going to say I'm younger, as in think about how. Well played. Not that much younger, but let's talk about what changes in your mind, in your body, and in your spirit from age 13, 14 to 17, 18. Yeah. I have a 15-year-old here now, and I'm getting to see it in real time as an outsider. And the boy that he was and the boy that he's becoming is happening so fast, and the man he's becoming, I would say. And I think that when I was a freshman in high school and Counting Crows lands in my lap, I wasn't ready for this introspective, I'm kind of disillusioned with some of the things that have been thrown at me in life, and things don't make sense like they were supposed to at this age. Adam Duritz is writing poetry, and I'm over there with my angsty, angry, all my emotions are important feelings. And I'm like, I'm not into it. Round Here comes out. It wouldn't be until years later when I was much more, mature and able to kind of listen to the words or understand that I started to understand Counting Crows. Now, the second album, see, one of my best friends in high school, he was a year older than me, and he absolutely loved Counting Crows, and he would always talk about him. And I was never I've never been a dick. I had friends that were definitely dicks about stuff, you know what I mean? But I would be like, yeah, okay. But inside my head, I was like, not for me, not heavy enough, not rocking enough. Right. But when Recovering the Satellites came out in 1996 and I heard I'm Not Sleeping, I went, wait, hang on a second.
Of the Silences.
Yeah. And then there was the one that was on the DGC Rarities, the what's it called? Einstein on the Beach. Yeah. And these songs were coming out slowly, but I wasn't ready for Counting Crows. I thought of, you know what I mean? I was watching, I had a lot of MTV, and you basically in 1993, you'd be like, okay, Counting Crows is that band where that guy who sings it has dreads and hangs out with a cast of friends all the time. That's basically the perception. Exactly. Is dating one of the females from all of them.
Yeah, Ross is on that list. Yeah.
Right. You're going, this dude's just fucking his way down the cast of Friends. He's writing songs about being around here, Mr. Jones, all stuff. And it wouldn't be until I start finally giving them a re-listen, a re-examine when I'm older, and I go, oh, I get it now. So I do love this album, but I was a young, immature brat, and I didn't get it back then.
I get that. I mean, I totally understand. And to be fair, Counting Crows isn't my favorite band, I love this record. I love a lot of the next record, and I love the song Colorblind off their third record. Yeah. But then, I'm not discrediting their catalog or anything, but then they kind of just fell off for me.
Sure.
And I'm very much like that with a lot of bands that I am just deeply passionate about. I'm deeply passionate about one or two albums.
100%.
Not a full catalog guy for hardly anyone, to be honest.
No, and nor I think that everybody maybe has maybe. I'm going to say
Unless
that maybe
it's Quicksand or Blur.
Yes, I was going to say you maybe choose one band, maybe two that your full catalog on. Yeah. But I get this question all the time in my videos and social media. They're like, do you know about the insert band here latest album? Or how come you haven't even talked about this release that's from 2018 from an artist that would have been huge in the 90s? And I'm like, because when I was 15, that was the most important, powerful thing that I could possibly hear at the time. But now I'm 45 and you're dropping new tracks from this artist on me. They don't have the same resonance. They don't have the same impact. I'm in a completely different place in my life while I listen to them and go, oh, what a familiar voice that sounds a little bit older and more gravelly, and what higher production quality that this band has. But my commitment to bands like the Pumpkins, that hasn't been without its anguish. You know what I mean? Like I've said this, I think I've said it on the show before. It's like being a fan of a sports team that has good seasons and bad seasons. Once you kind of commit on to full catalog, you're gonna be disappointed.
Totally.
You're gonna have albums come out that you go, this one's great, and everybody else is like, it sucks, and you're like, no, it's just, you just don't get it yet. You know, you want to defend your artist.
Or like, can you believe your favorite band just dropped this clunker?
Yeah, and you're like,
you just take it so deeply.
You're like, look, what you don't understand is that the members were going through something very dark, and it's completely understandable. But
just let it grow on you.
Let it grow on you, man. And so for Counting Crows, 100%, I get that you're like, it's not my favorite band of all time. But that's the power of these moments, and why I loved that you set up when you heard it, where you heard it, how old you were, because those albums that land like a meteor in our lives, you know, they punch us, and you're just never the same after. And so this album for you is one of those albums, and that moves me. And I was listening to it this morning. I was listening to it last night. And I was picturing, you know, just sitting there, you know, I poured myself a cup of coffee, and I was just like looking out the window, and I was like, yeah, this is how you listen to this. This is August and everything after, you know, this is the feel. So
thanks, man.
Yeah. So I think it was a great selection. And for people that were teenagers like me that dismissed it because you heard a couple, you know, radio singles that didn't connect with you the right way, I highly recommend you go in there and you listen to the album again with new ears, new eyes, and experience it. You know, there is, and there were songs on there that I don't even think I realized how well I knew them until I heard them again.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even realize Rain song, or what? Rain King. Yeah, that one I was like, see, look how little I know my shit. I'm like, Rain song? No, I was like, oh, I know this song so well. And then the last one on the album, which, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it a hidden track?
No, it's just got, it has some modulated feedback that starts the track, so it doesn't start right away.
Oh, A Murder of One. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Probably, you know, one of my favorite songs on the whole fucking record.
Yes.
And, I was like you, like, no disrespect to Mr. Duritz, but like Mr. Jones wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I heard, and it, to be honest, it still isn't my favorite song off the record. To me, that I love Round Here, but
Round Here is a great
doesn't
song.
Start until, for me personally, until Perfect Blue Buildings, and then it just goes to this completely fucking insane place, you know, and that's why I tracked it sequentially. I tracked it in order because there were songs that like I wasn't fully in love with, but wanted to love, that I knew I had to get through before I got to the stuff that I was really most excited about. Yeah. And as a body of work, it's a fucking perfect record.
Yeah.
Of course, there are songs that you like less and you like more, but the way that I know now that I did what I set out to do was make a record that I wanted to listen to. And that's kind of always my goal now. Yeah. Is I find myself listening to this version more than the original, which is wild to me.
That's
but
awesome.
I don't know if I'm still listening to it going like, fuck, I should have done that differently, or I meant to add this, but I didn't. You know, I don't know if I'm still like picking it apart, but I genuinely love it. You know.
Yeah, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, that's all that matters, is that we love the things that we put them out in the world. The reason you create anything, right, is to share something that we love with others. We're trying to take something that connects with us and then show it to somebody else. And you wanted to show, like, not only can I play Counting Crows, August and Everything After for you, but I'd like to show you what my energy, what my feeling is on this album, and I want to share that with you. That means something. And so it's funny because their label's choice, probably more than likely for Mr. Jones to be the first single. You get why they did it. You got it's a pop hit. You can still see, you could be at a bar right now on a 90s night and Mr. Jones will come on and you'll see everybody just like this.
Yeah.
You're
not changing the radio.
Yeah, you're not changing the radio. You're gonna jump up. You're immediately like so it did it. But I think that if you get into the other songs of the album, you start to realize like, oh, there's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of introspection. I talked a moment ago about my friend Peter. He was a year older than me. He was crazy about it. And I would describe Peter as being a very introspective friend of mine. I think he was somebody that was, especially in that era of his life, he was an actor like me, but he was much more kind of processing, meaning and depth. And I think that that's the people that this album was written for. So, so anyway, it's just awesome. So again, August and Everything After, Counting Crows, and then they made many albums, many live recordings, and are they still together to this day? They're still going. They
just did a huge tour with Dashboard.
Yeah, awesome.
I've never seen them live.
I never have either.
But yeah, never seen them. Just I love this record, and what's wild to me, dude, is I've sent it to a lot of people. I've posted it on my socials and stuff, and I have people who are much younger than me who know music. They say, I think this is the best thing that you've ever done. I can't believe you wrote these songs. And I'm like, oh geez. Okay. So that's really great. That's nice to hear.
I appreciate that so much.
It blows my mind that like people just had never, just even the name alone to me is like, oh yeah, obviously this is that Counting Crows record,
Yeah.
Like that people think it's a new thing. Man, I think that to me, that's kind of beautiful because that was part of why I wanted to do it was like, to introduce people to it, because it's been 30 years. There's definitely people that exist that were born after 9/11.
Absolutely.
Which, that's a thing. Can you believe that?
Yes.
That have never heard it before. But it isn't until people are like, yeah, this is a good record that you did, that you wrote. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, that's crazy to me. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's so important to me that how could everyone in the world not have heard it,
Yeah, and that's the thing that I forget all the time is that when I make videos about songs, and people our age will say things like like my Buried Treasure series, right? Where I do songs on Sundays that are like, this is a buried treasure. And oftentimes people say, not buried for me, or I hear the song all the time. And I'm going, yeah, you're forgetting something. Cause even past 9/11, my son was born in 2008 and he's 15.
Wow.
So you go, people who were born in 2008 who are teenagers and accessing music for the first time and also falling madly in love with the 90s. It's pretty common for, these young teenagers now to hear bands from the 90s and be like, wow, why is this so different than what's here now? And you're like, well, so much has changed in the world.
Yeah.
We've gone so much more into this. Music is readily available and anybody can make it and record it. It was a lot less back then. And the drive to kind of push the envelope during that decade was pretty intense, just to try something different. And people were getting exposure on the radio and on MTV that you were surprised because these executives were going, these teenagers seem to like stuff that we don't expect. So
yeah, let's try it.
Let's try it. Let's try anything. And so when I make a video about a song and people our age go like, well, yeah, I know that song. I'm like, I'm not making this for you. I'm not making this for you. I know you know it.
Yeah.
We're standing here together and going, of course I remember this song. But do you know how awesome it is when a fucking 17-year-old goes, I've never heard this song before in my life and it's changed me forever. That I get to participate in some small way in that moment. You kidding me?
That's awesome.
That is fucking awesome. And that's what you're doing as well, is that you're letting people hear and experience something that's magical for you. And then they get a chance to go back and discover this album and open that door up. And I think that is a cool place to be. So I think about we're 16 years old. And can you imagine somebody just like who would, we didn't have the internet, right? But they would just be like hanging out at a record store and they'd be like, man, You've never heard, Houses of the Holy.
The Beatles.
You've never heard
Yeah.
the Beatles, and they just sit down and they start showing you. You would be like forever grateful. You would tell stories for the rest of your life about the guru at the record store that showed you what real music was. So you're goddamn right. I'm going to talk about every single song, album, band I love from my youth up until now because I just want to be part of sharing art and love with people.
I'm with you, man. And I thought of something that melted my mind.
Yeah.
Was this record came out 30 years ago, which to me and probably to you seems like just yesterday. This is our old man shit right here.
Totally. Feels like it was just yesterday.
Man shit. Feels like yesterday. But if you go back 30 years to 93 and 30 years beyond that was the fucking Beatles. Like
totally.
63. Like
totally.
That seems like the deep past,
Deep past. When we were kids and somebody said the Beatles, you'd be like, oh, that's old music. And so then you go, okay, so what does 1993 sound like to somebody in 2023 who's young? They go, oh my God.
Old music.
Old music. That's way back when. My dad loves that
Classic
stuff.
rock.
Yeah. Classic rock. Oh man, this is exactly what I hoped it would be, which was we would get into how albums touch us at different points in time in our life, and you really sent it home, and I love that you did this project. I really did.
Dude, thank you so much. I love it so much, and I'm very glad I did it. And I don't know if I'll ever do it again with another record, but
sure,
because there's just not. I could do it with another record, but it wouldn't have the same feeling, because this was the one that was. If I was going to do it, I would have to do because it affected me so deeply. It still does. It still does.
Yeah. It makes me feel like I should try to cover Siamese Dream, except I'm going to have to find one hell of a drummer.
Oh my God. You probably have access to him though.
Yeah. Right.
Dude, it would be another one. The first Third Eye Blind record.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Talk about like getting past the hits.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Semi-Charmed Life is the fucking Mr. Jones of that record.
Totally. It's the one that everybody knows.
The deep cuts hit. That's when the record really has teeth.
Yeah. So. It's another good one. Good one. Looks like I'll have to have you on next year after you cover that entire album. No.
Well, that came out in 97. So
you got a few more years. Yeah. Got a few more years. Oh man. Dude. Well, Daniel G. Harmann, everybody make sure you go check out his music. It's streaming pretty much everywhere, but you just put his name in the search bar and you'll find it. But I'll link on this episode ways that you can check out this cover album that he did, and you can look at all of his music and work that he's put out over the years. But man, I'm so glad we got to pull this together, and may the tradition of our photos being shared. You know what? What an idiot. I should have had it right here with me. I should have just had it over my shoulder. Somebody's got to have it. It's right there, the picture.
I have the Counting Crows record there.
There it is.
I texted you yesterday the picture of
it
on top, our photo on top of that. Maybe we can use that for some promo shit.
We should totally use that for promo shit. I love it. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we say adios?
No, I mean, just thanks for having me on. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Always being supportive of my music, and new people that may have come to me through this podcast or through this record. It really means the world to me. So thank you. And
awesome.
But honestly, don't take my word for it. Go check out the original August and Everything After, and have your fucking mind blown. Have that, be your sunken treasure.
Yes, absolutely. I love it so much. Well, thanks, Dan. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, brother.
In 5 years, I guess.
Yeah, I'll see you in 5 years. Later, man. Bye.
What an awesome guest. He's such a great guy, and I had so much fun talking with him about this album, and I was a little nervous. There were nerves in me about sharing the fact that the album didn't land for me at the age that I was, and that was something that, we hung out and talked, and I knew that this album meant a lot to him, but I'm just one of those people that I've never wanted to be like, that band sucks, which I don't think that at all. It was like every time we were talking about the album, I was like, I don't really want to sit here and, while he's sharing about what he cares about, I don't want to sit here and naysay it. You know what I mean? So I knew I wanted to just share that information with him when we could have a chance to sit down, talk about it in depth. And I could also share that it just took me some time to figure it out. And like he said so perfectly, I discovered it eventually. So I'm so glad we got a chance to dig into that album today. And the album that came afterwards, Recovering the Satellites, I love that one too. I think it's a really good record, and I think you should check it out. But more importantly, you should be checking out Daniel G. Harman's stuff. I've linked it in this episode. It's in the body of this video here, and I'll put it on the socials and all the promotions things, so you can go check out all the music that he's been writing over the years. He really is a super talented guy, really great guy. He puts a lot of heart and passion behind what he does, and you can hear it in his music. And honestly, it's so impressive that he did this whole album, August and Everything After, start to finish. I mean, that is quite an undertaking. And as you can see, it meant a lot to him. And now he's proud of it. And I can understand why, because I've heard it and it's remarkable. Just to take on a body of work like that and try to recreate it in your own voice is awesome. So thanks again for joining me today for Waterproof Records. Thank you to Daniel G. Harmann for joining me on the show. It was great having you on, and look forward to hanging out and getting together again soon for some margaritas and take more funny pictures that we can share over the years. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time on Waterproof Records. Bye.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna